Good morning, afternoon, evening to you all. Welcome to this session that FAO and partners have put together, really looking at during this important Africa Climate Week under the track tree, looking at sustainable and resilient agri-food system and green space for better African cities. So we are having this session at a very important time during this 2021 Africa Climate Week, hosted by the government of Uganda, which really aim at developing or enhancing that momentum we have towards more robust position for the 26th Climate Change Conference of Parties, COP26. As you have seen in the concept note, it aims really to take the pulse of the climate action in selected African countries, explore climate change challenges and opportunities, and showcase ambitious solutions and action that we have witnessed in some parts of Africa, in particular in some cities. We know that the greenhouse emissions are linked to the way we live in urban areas. We also have developed a society where we consume more in terms of food. We recall that the recently concluded UN Food Summit calls for an urgent action and concrete action to address food issues, food challenges we face around the world. Among other solutions that were proposed during the UN Food Summit, it was highly recommended that we reconnect cities with nature, looking at nature-based solutions, looking at agriculture, looking at urban forestry, looking at the circular approach for food and nutrients, look at territorial connections between urban and rural. So all these issues are very much at the forefront of what cities and many countries in Africa are working towards. To respond to some of these challenges, as you are quite aware, FAO and its partner had put together this very ambitious program, the Green Cities Initiative. This particular initiative tries to look into the connection between urban, peri-urban, and rural agriculture, and looking at the interface between urban forestry and its environment, looking at the food system in general, and how it can be transformative to build more sustainable systems and sustainable cities and so forth. To look at some of these issues, we have put together a very exciting panel. I will start, I will just list them quickly, and then we're gonna get started. We have first Dr. Gay, who is a sub-regional representative for FAO at the West African and region, and the Africa Global Green Cities Initiative champion, who will tell more about this initiative. Then we're going to turn to Kisumu in Kenya to look at, to hear from the, first look into Kigali to hear their experience in agriculture in cities. We look at Kisumu as well to look at their experience, how they are addressing these particular issues we highlighted earlier. We will then look at some of the outcomes of recently held meetings, or important meetings. First, the African Forum on Urban Forestry, where my colleague Nora Beramuri, a senior forestry officer at FAO Regional Office for Africa, we look at the 15 cities food system dialogues and the outcomes that will be important for us to know what is the way forward in that. We will also like to look at how you're going to engage in this discussion. It will just not be one way. We hope that we're going to make good use of the question and answer box. You will have the opportunity to post your questions through there, and we pick them up and use them later. In the chat menu, you can post any information, any relevant point, any contribution that you would like to make during this session. To all panelists, we hope that we're going to really keep your microphone and camera off when you are not presenting, so that you can have sufficient focus to the main speaker, and that you limit your time to the allocated 5, 6, 7, or 10 minutes, depending on what you have been assigned. I would like to thank everyone and excuse any misstep that we may make along the way, but I count very much on everyone to take this session to be more focused, to be more interested, engaged during this session. So it's now my pleasure to invite Dr. Gay to tell us more how FAO and Green City Initiative is addressing climate change in the context of this African Climate Week. Dr. Gay, you have 7 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Remy, for that introduction. I think Jules has to put my slide, and before I start, I will tell you that my presentation will be on how the FAO Green City Initiative address climate change. Next slide. And as we all know, there are many linkages among climate change, agri-food system, and urbanization. The way we live together, the way we consume and produce food, interact with climate. Climate change is a major risk for humanity and the planet, to which expansion of cities and current food systems are contributing. Indeed, like agriculture, urbanization is on the one hand a victim of climate change, but on the other hand, a contributor to climate change. The high human concentration dramatically increased the climate change vulnerability and the risk for cities. So you can see the graph there, where the prediction for 2050 is showing that we're going to have more people in the city than the rural in sub-Saharan Africa. So there is an unprecedented urbanization trend that started, and this will be, most of the African cities will be fully transformed in the 3 coming decades. Many main growth will be observed in intermediary cities. Next. So local government will have to anticipate all this with good planning. Remy, you just talked about the UN Food System Summit. The summit is highlighting the fact that our current food system cannot continue without profound changes. Current food systems have huge environmental impact, partly driven by cities expansion. Meanwhile, current food system cannot ensure health and social benefit to all, in particular for vulnerable people. Next, please. So, despite challenging perspective, how can we keep African cities green and tackle climate change? And this is why it's important for us, next please, to give what are the main elements that a green city can have. A green city manages its natural capital to increase resilience to climate, health, and economic shock, and reduce the impact of natural disasters. It is a city that plants and maintains trees to reduce temperatures, clean the air, manage storm water, reduce land degradation, and preserve biodiversity. It is a city that designs strategies to reduce food loss, recover food supplies, and manage food waste so that it can be reused as compost and fertilizers that contribute significantly to reducing the emissions. Next, please. It's a place where people have access to land, as you can see in this picture, land that can cultivate to diversify their diet and improve their livelihoods. Next, please. A green city should provide access to healthy and nutritious foods at a convenient distance and also at an affordable price. It provides equal access to quality green and public spaces where people can walk, meet, and play, encouraging social cohesion and active lifestyle. Next, please. It is a city that invests in its human capital, valuing talent, culture, and innovation to serve collective interests in most effective manner. A green city invests in innovation. It creates jobs. It fosters favorable environment to attract investment in the green sector. Now, what are the key principles? There are 4 key principles that we have to recall. Rural-urban synergy is important. Social inclusion and quick equity. The third one is resilience and sustainability. And the fourth is agri-food and green space interconnection. So these are the 4 principles that we have to keep to really try to implement things at local level. Moreover, FAO is designing and developing a green city program. Next slide. And this program is based on promoting innovative and sustainable integrated green city policies, planning and actions, urban and peri-urban agriculture, urban forestries, agri-food systems. The target globally is for 1,000 cities for the next 10 years. Next, please. We have examples of cities like Antananarivo, Nairobi, Kisumu, Kigali, that are already moving towards the creation of stakeholder platform involving actors from agriculture, health, environment, sector, etc. The program will be based on social innovation and multi-holder engagement will be important. Next, please. The program of Green City will also be based on technical innovation. And this is very important. The technical innovation will require enabling environment to address health, environment, food security, nutrition challenges, and build resilience to shocks and climate change in an integrated manner. Next, please. This will imply that the program actually put in place integrated urban planning. This implies also evidence-based policy, risk and vulnerability assessment, planning frameworks and inclusive governance are in place, adapted to different contexts to promote and foster investment and innovation in a resilient and green infrastructures and sustainable urban food system. Now, this program will be put in place in a number of countries in Africa, and also some countries are already embarking in this, about 20 countries, and more countries will have to come at the end of the program. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for keeping the time, 7 minutes sharp. That's great. Thanks a lot for really highlighting some of the key features of this great initiative, including the principles that are underlying them, some great instrument that cities are putting in place, the platform. There are some questions already in the chat. You're going to reflect on them. And I know earlier we received some questions that you're going to reflect on them in terms of how those 20 cities that are already in the program, for instance, are exchanging ideas. So you're going to reflect on that. And we get back to you later on how you're going to perhaps provide some elements of response and how it works in practice. So you have all those questions, Dr. Gay, and you're going to get back to you. For the time being, let me now turn to the next speaker as the presentation will be loaded in a second. So we're going to turn to Kigali to hear from Jean, who is urban economist at the city of Kigali in charge of economic planning. Jean could present to to us the challenges they are facing on climate change, and what is the role and the place that agriculture, food, and forestry plays in the master plan of Kigali. Jean, you have the floor, sir. 7 minutes.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a great opportunity just to have this presentation in line with the master plan. What does the master plan, the Kigali City Master Plan, provides in terms of securing the food system and also taking into account the climate resilience. So this is a very short presentation. Of course, we'll be having discussions where we shall elaborate more. So when you look at the population of the city of Kigali, in terms of, when you look at the trend in terms of the population growth, you see when you look at this map, you see where we were in 1962 in terms of the population or the boundaries of the city of Kigali, 1987 and 2014. You see how the population, when you look at the figures, projections by the Institute of Statistics, you see how the trend in population growth is very much increasing. So it gives us an indication of, efforts that can be, or that should be engaged in terms of ensuring the living of this big number of people in the city of Kigali with food security, or of course with the resilience in terms of the climate change. When you look at the master plan of the Kigali city, this is a plan that was approved in September 2020. So it gives or it establishes an implementation framework that has the 4 main pillars to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of in terms of implementation of this master plan. So let me just briefly describe these 4 pillars. When you look at the master plan management, it's been provided a team. This is mainly to establish a set of a process, because when we talk of the master plan, it's not just a construction, it is the land use of the land in the city of Kigali. So it tackles all sectors of economy, be economic, agriculture, forest, recreational, different ways of using the land. So it was imperative to ensure the management, a clear management that set to enable a flexible but also a rigorous enforcement mechanism to ensure the compliance, but also taking into consideration local needs when it comes to the sustainable development. Here we remember, when talk of sustainability, we have 3 main components: social, economic, and environment. So the management gives that flexibility, but also mechanism to enforce compliance to the master plan. When you look at the implementation, it is phased into 5 phases, one starting from 2019 to 2020, and also it establishes an indicative size of in terms of compliance. So this is another way of reviewing, but also ensuring not having a plan like a static or something there that is not touchable. So with the management, with the other element, this institutional framework, so all stakeholders or involved institutions refer to this phase in terms of responding to the sectoral needs and priorities. Back to the second pillar, institutional framework, we all understand that the implementation of master plan requires a clear engagement plan or framework and partnership. When you look at the implementation, you see, for example, we have a wetland master plan. When you look at the implementation, there's a list of activities that are allowed to be implemented there. When it comes to the recreational, we have a sector or a ministry in charge of sport. When we look at the investment, we have the RDB. When we look at the agriculture, we have the Ministry of Agriculture. When we look at, different sector ministries are all involved in this institutional framework, be internal, within the city of Kigali. So it is, it's been provided in the current structuring that the current structure provides specific units in charge of implementation and inspection or inspecting the compliance of the master plan. So it gives also a framework of engagement with the external stakeholders in as far as the implementation master plan is concerned. The third pillar, the good governance, actually this was inspired by these definitions of good governance, just to ensure that the master plan has put in place some tools and strategies to ensure the accountability and responsibility in the entire process and the procedures, be it the review, be it the implementation, be it even different consultations. So the governance structure is there established, and tools when it comes, like, for example, the construction or the land use, we have committees to review those projects, but also to ensure that no one is left behind, and also to ensure inclusiveness with the community. We understand that we are not at the same level of living standards, but also the master plan provides that everyone is eligible or has the right to use the land, but also in a different categorization when it comes to these zoning, taking into consideration the specific activities, the residential, agriculture, industrial, tourism. So these are big categories in terms of land use. And when it comes like to residential, part of the category, so the master plan provides the proper way of having everyone able to live in the city of Kigali. So back to the fourth one, or the last one, the capital investment. So implementing the master plan requires heavy projects, both small and heavy, individual and institutional, but just to ensure for example, for the government institutions, we have to ensure an enabling environment for the private investors, or for the private sector to be able to explore opportunities, but also to ensure that conducive environment for investment. So we have a list of projects in infrastructure, in housing, in agriculture, in tourism, in recreational. So to ensure that by 2050, the master plan is implemented. So, and taking into consideration these phases, so we've come up with a list of projects that give a clear direction of where in annual plans or the medium term expenditure framework, we have to put more effort in as far as the implementation of master plan is concerned. So looking at the green city, this is just a component that I extracted from the objectives and strategies of the master plan. We have a list of these development goals. So I just wanted to pick this green city as far as this climate resiliency and food system are concerned. So we have to ensure that the land in the city of Kigali, particularly the wetlands, you know, the government of Rwanda has come up with a policy just to ensure the master plan or illegal activities in wetlands are relocated and removed. So we have an example of a list of wetlands where illegal activities have relocated. So in order to ensure that these wetlands are properly utilized and productive, so we have to ensure that restoration and reservation. We have also to promote an open spaces. We all understand that the community needs this space just to recreational tourism and so on, but also ensuring that element of sustainable development. So we understand that the global climate change has an impact on the city of Kigali and the country in general. But the government of Rwanda has come up with policies and strategies to ensure or to reduce the gas emissions rate. We look at different reports. So statistics confirm that at least there is improvement and efforts in place. But also we don't forget that this global climate change in different ways, directly or indirectly, affects activities or the city of Kigali. So for example, in these days, we are experiencing different like the flood, the landslides, the heavy rains, the droughts. So these in different ways affect the food system, from the production, the transport, even the consumption, but also it increases the waste. So another element that is an evidence that Kigali, in different ways, we experience the climate shocks. So this growing urbanization, and you see, for those who have managed to visit the Kigali, you see how the construction, the urbanization, be residential, be industrial, is growing. So when we look at these agricultural activities in wetland, so we are seeing some risk and issues caused by this growing urbanization. But the management of the city of Kigali has already come up with strategies to ensure the proper drainage, the draining systems, but also these are heavy projects, some in the pipeline, others under in implementation. So with those shocks, questions.
Yeah, just hurry up if you can.
Yes, please. So yes. With those shocks, of course, question marks we can ask ourselves, like, if we continue with those issues, so what will be the impact in the market, in food production? So it is imperative in our policies, in our plans, to ensure that we take into consideration these climate change, but also enforcing the master plan, because it secures a proper land and proper tools to ensure compliance. So this is a strategic framework in as far as responding to or ensuring the climate change doesn't affect. So these are a list of, I would ask everyone just to pay attention on this in red, the program action plan. So we have a policy in place. This is at the level of the country, but also it is a basis in our plans and the consultations, the efforts and different engagement with the stakeholders. We refer to these policy actions in order to respond to the climate changes. So back to agriculture. So with the land use, you see we have a program, land consolidation, to ensure the proper use of land reserved to the agricultural activities, but also with the climate change, come up with the technologies. This is a small-scale irrigation for small farmers, and also protecting the environment, the radical and the progressive terraces, just to keep the land or the land to ensure the production of agriculture in the city of Kigali responds to the needs, but also keep increasing. So concluding, actually, it is This requires joint efforts with different stakeholders, government, private sector, NGOs, everyone who is interested in these food systems and climate resilience. So the platform is already there and we welcome engagement. So let me stop by here, and I welcome inputs and questions. I'm happy to interact further on this. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Paul, for this very practical example of how regulatory framework, in this case a master plan, takes into account the dimension of agriculture, climate change, and food system. And I was very pleased with how the framework is set to take into account so many dimensions that are very fundamental to ensure that we keep these things on track. And some of the instruments you have put in place, the different committees, the platforms, that are all important to keep the engagement of the community really at the forefront of the implementation, as what you call the enforcement of the master plan, to make it work for the benefit of all. And I like also your idea that the city of Kigali would not like to leave anyone behind, since everyone is not at the same level. You have received some questions, some asking concretely how can the city like Kigali protect agriculture and natural land, especially the urban sprawl. How is the master plan working towards that? Which authority in particular is in charge of protecting agricultural land? Say in the case of Kigali, which authority is in charge? The other question was related to how the city of Kigali is actually managing the food waste. So something to ponder about. We're going to come back to you later on, but reflect on them as we move to Kisumu to hear from Dr. Paul Amonga, who is the Chief Officer Agriculture and Irrigation in the Kisumu County in Kenya. Dr. Omanga, Kisumu is the third city in Kenya situated on the shore of Lake Victoria, right?
Yes.
Why is your city developing a food and agricultural policy? It's a bit rare. Can you tell us more how it is connected to climate change, and what is your plan moving forward to take this issue really forward? 8 to 10 minutes, if you can.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going first to introduce you to Kisumu city. The city is located in the shores of Lake Victoria and is the third largest city in Kenya, as you have said. It covers about 14 political wards out of the 35 wards in the county. And Kisumu city has a growing population of over 500,000 people. The city is both rural and urban settlements. And majority of the city dwellers live in rural areas surrounding the city. And Kisumu city is often faced with the vagaries of weather. Actually, it is located in the flood-prone region of Kenya, the Kano Plains, where floods often come in April, and immediately after flood, there is drought. Floods usually affect people and affect food systems, and drought also affect people and food systems. And all this happens within a season. That is the aerial view of Kisumu city and its location. And these are the informal settlements in Kisumu. The map, the next map, the informal settlements of Kisumu city. Actually, as you pose the question, why are we getting into this? Urban agriculture is widely practiced in peri-urban areas, including wetlands of Kisumu. But this is done at subsistence level to meet household food requirements. The larger part of the city is basically rural, as I have said, in character, and practices crop and livestock production where climate vagaries affect production and leads to food and nutrition insecurity. Kisumu County is and city is basically a net food importer, and the underlying potential in urban agriculture and livestock keeping cannot be underscored. So this is why the Kisumu city would like to have some policies and legislation to lead us to improved food systems. And some of the challenges, as we can see, is ensuring food security and nutrition, management of solid wastes, development of green spaces, and dealing with the climate change. As we talk now, next slide. As we talk now, there is very good political will at both county and national level to support urban and peri-urban agriculture. And there is already urban and peri-urban agriculture policy initiated at our national level, at the Kenya level. And at Kisumu city level or Kisumu county level, both the county executive and the legislature are supportive and very willing to cascade the national urban and peri-urban agriculture policy. There are old legislations that has been restricting urban farming, and policies and legislation reviews are ongoing to conform with the current challenges of climate change and food systems. We have a number of supportive policies and plans that has been developed, and some are getting developed now that are friendly to climate change, to urban and peri-urban agriculture. And Kisumu City has developed a plan for the next 50 years. And this plan has demarcated specific areas for greening spaces, and these are for fruit trees, agroforestry, and flower planting, and even for agriculture. There are initiatives to reforest water towers around Kisumu City. There are quite a number of water towers that we have made some initiatives to reforest them and rehabilitate the green spaces. The county government has gazetted 5 satellite towns within a radius of 50 kilometers from Kisumu city, and these centers will serve or are going to serve as centers for peri-urban agriculture production and processing, and will be linked to the city markets. We have the National Climate Change Response Strategy and the Climate Change Action Plan. I'm going now to discuss what we are doing on food systems. Actually, in Kisumu City, since we started working with the FAO, we have introduced a number of modern technologies that can improve food security and nutrition in urban and peri-urban areas. We are adapting technologies including moist gardens, shade nets, micro gardens, multi-story gardens, and these technologies can be used within the city by the small households and in the periphery of the city. And it is catching up, and a number of people, a number of households have started picking up these technologies in growing vegetables and fruits. And in livestock, poultry is becoming an important activity within the households in the city. We are also promoting livestock, especially the dairy goats, in the cities to improve food and nutrition security. In the greening of the city, the city authority has demarcated parts, if you can see that map, has demarcated parts of the city for tree and agroforestry planting that will provide fruits, fuel, flowers, and other products to the city dwellers. This is a picture on how the city plan intends to have forestry and trees planted in the cities, in the spaces for recreation and the rest. And actually, there's a good plan for that. On food waste management, if you can see on the left-hand side, we used to have a waste dumping site, which has been a big bother to the city dwellers. The city now has proposed sorting and composting of the waste at a newly established site at a place called Kasese on the outskirts of the city. This will now commercialize even the waste management. We are going to have compost manure and even sell for increasing agricultural production. And the other waste could be used for other products. And I think that is what I heard, Erokamano. Erokamano means thank you in my mother tongue. Asante.
Thank you, Asante Sana. Thanks a lot, Paul, Dr. Amanga, for this very interesting perspective from Kisumu, where I could see clearly that you look at multi-scalar regulations from policy to plan to projects to address multiple ills, I would say, climate change, food insecurity, drought, and many other issues. So I really enjoyed the presentation, and kudos to Kisumu and to FAO for supporting such great cities, and to know that there is a political will to support that. I know there are some questions that had been shared, sent to you, so that the audience is a bit aware. It was really about, similar to Kisumu, what is the role, which authority, which institution is really responsible for protecting agricultural land or use right in the city of Kisumu? How is the city in Kisumu, you are connected to markets? Are the farmer really interested in being connected? Are there a specific program targeting farmers and the market? There was another one in the nexus between the youth and urban and agriculture in general. Is there any specific program to incentivize youth to engage in, agricultural, in food system in general? So ponder among them. I mean, ponder on those questions. We're gonna get back to you. The time for me to now turn to my colleague Nora Baramuni, who is a senior forestry officer at FAO Regional Office for Africa. Nora, we are very impressed that you organized the first African Forum on Urban Forestry last July. Where did you get the idea, and why the first African Forestry Forum? What did you learn? Did you have a chance to see how urban forestry and climate change are actually making any difference to African cities? So I'd like to hear more some of the highlights of that thing and where is it going? Over to you, Nora.
Thank you very much, Remy, and thanks also very much to all the colleagues, the previous speakers from Kigali, from Kisumu, who have been really presenting great experiences, as well as, of course, my colleague Robert. Actually, the forum was organized not only by FAO, but it's also in close collaboration with your institution, Remy, which is the United Nations Human Settlement Program, UN Habitats, and it has been, of course, organized under the patronage of the African Union Commission. And this forum has been organized because there was a call for action from what we call the FAO African Forestry Wildlife Commission, which is a commission which is actually involving heads of forestry and heads of wildlife of 53 member countries in Africa, plus other observer countries and other organizations, including UN and many organizations that are actually active in forestry and wildlife in Africa. And this was done actually during the session, the 22nd session of the Commission in March 2020, when we have met in the Kruger National Park in South Africa just before the lockdown, So this forum has really involved many leading experts on urban and peri-urban forestry, partners, organizations, people who are architects or public space and green space in Africa, with mayors, with civil society, and many local voices, in order to share, concrete experiences and lessons learned, and really advance the urban forestry and peri-urban forestry agenda in Africa. So my dear Remy and dear colleagues and participants, I would like to summarize the conclusions from this forum in 7 key messages, of course, using your 7 minutes. So 7 is really a magic number. So the first message that came up from this event is that urban forestry is key to achieve Africa's sustainable development. And, although at present Africa has only 40% urbanizations, I will say between brackets, with its current growth rate, it will soon exceed 50% threshold that other regions in the world have already reached. So it's important that we prepare for this future. And in fact, the continent is projected to have the fastest urban growth rate in the world by 2050, housing, listen well, housing an additional 950 million urban dwellers. So really a big number. And often, urbanization is taking place at the expense of forests or natural habitats and deforestation. So, and where is nature? We need really to make, again, peace with nature to support us face this context of multiple crises, including climate change, the COVID-19 and future pandemics, and many other issues like drought, like desertification, and so on. So this is why really in this urban transition, we need to prepare, and it will really offer great opportunity to integrate trees and forests and green spaces into the cities. So to develop really greener, healthier, happier, and more resilient urban environments. And of course, due to the whole benefits that forests and trees and urban greening, could really provide to respond to the major targets that we have in the Agenda 2030, so the UN Sustainable Development Goals, all of them, as well as, of course, the African Union Agenda 2063. So both of which are really increasingly being used as reference in order to tackle sustainable development, not only in rural areas, but also in urban areas, and building the cement or the linkage between these two to supporting the planet and humanity against climate change and other crises. The second message that came in from this forum is that African cities, and actually the ones who live in these cities, need to recognize and value the whole full extent of ecosystem services and goods and services from urban and peri-urban forests. Many people will say urban and peri-urban forests and trees in the cities are really good lungs, you know, for in a city, so supporting carbon sequestration, having more oxygen, pollutant, it's beautiful, you know, it's really make the cities beautiful, etc. But it is much more than that. It really supports the biodiversity. It manages rainwater, so to have really good water infiltration and mitigate droughts and floods and so on, as well as mitigating urban heat waves that are really facing increasingly, and improve soil health and goods and services and so on. So really attention needs to be paid to the multiple ecosystem goods and services that trees and forests could provide to our African cities and their inhabitants. And for instance, in order, for example, one of the big issues that we have in Africa is desertification, erosion, you know, sand encroachment. So forests and trees have been really used as green belts, as a shielding, you know, the cities and their inhabitants from these problems. The third message is that we cannot do much without community engagement and ownership of this process in order to ensure really urban forestry becomes a priority in the cities. And I am so happy to hear from the example of our colleagues, Jean from Kigali and Paul from Kisumu, that really put urban forests and forestry, you know, at the heart of their master plans and of their policies and plans. So we need really to translate national strategies for urban greening into practical local implementation. And in order to do that, we need really the involvement and the engagement of communities into the planning, to also respond to their needs, to the local conditions and the opportunities. And it is only by consulting them that we can go far. The other maybe also, for example, let's go to the fourth message, because time, you know, in the interest of time, intersectoral collaboration and stakeholder involvement are critical to boost the implementation and sustainable management of urban forests and green spaces in the region. Collaboration at all scales, from national to local to regional, international, but also across different sectors: the forestry, the agriculture, the urban planning, the finance, the architecture, etc., etc. So it's really, we need to look at it really at a wider system, and we need to have really a successful planning, as the master plans and the plans that our colleagues from Kisumu and Kigali have mentioned. And it's also vital to involve and listen to all the voices from all the stakeholder groups, youth, women, men, of course, as well as the urban poor, as well as the private sector. So we need really to take these into consideration. The fifth message that came in from this forum is existing urban, there are many multiple urban forestry initiatives in the region, and they need to be visible. They need to be connected, shared, and scaled up, and enhance collaboration, South-South cooperation between these initiatives. So we need really to build on these knowledge and these practices. I remember one day, you know, I have actually visited Kisumu a long time ago, and I have visited a school for children, primary school, who has been working together with the Kenya Forestry Institute and the Kew Botanical Garden, and they have been using native species in order to, you know, to build tree nurseries within the schools with the children, and these can be, of course, used for you know, supporting greening of the school, but also it's an experience that can be also used, for example, for by our DM Paul, who is also looking at urban and forestry. So why don't we use native species for this work? And the sixth message is that planning, design, and management of urban forests should aim to improve urban resilience and increase the local biodiversity of African cities. I really touched this. Africa is biodiverse, is rich of trees, beautiful trees, very important for food, for feed, for beauty, for pollination, for many other type of needs. So we need really to use these species and promote them and grow them in order to use them in our cities, and they will be actually more adapted to the climate change, and so they will not need more water and more, let's say, maintenance and so on. So it's really important to take these into consideration. And finally, final point and final message, let's say the last one, but not the least one, is that a roadmap is being built together. So the forum participants, you know, this forum, it's true that it started in July and it is continuing to work because participants are interconnected. They are really working together, and they have defined or identified several areas of action to work together towards a roadmap and implement this roadmap in order to advance urban forestry and peri-urban forestry in Africa. And these include the areas, for example, priority areas include capacity development, research and education, governance and stakeholder involvement, cross-sectoral involvement and partnerships, sustainable financing investment, communication, advocacy and outreach. So all this is really in the making, and we are really working together with all our colleagues, our partners, the local voices to support the finalization of the roadmap, and mainly and mostly implement the actions that have been identified by the mayors, by the Forestry Institution, FAO, UN Habitat, and all the networks that were present there in Africa. So it was really a great learning experience. And we hope, of course, that we will continue this journey with all of you here. Thank you very much for having me.
Nora, just wow, how passionate. I couldn't stop you. Now, it's not by accident that you are the champion in initiating this great thing. You seem to be one of the most passionate urban forestry person that I've ever heard. So that's very exciting. Thanks a lot. Thanks for those who are still on. But Nora, you know that there was one participant who was very interested, keen to know, how do you set up a new governance system that works to protect and promote urban forestry? And how do you really balance that demand that you see from, especially in African cities, where you have a demand for fuel wood? I mean, people use that forests for firewood. And how do you actually still promote that when you still have that pressure from that, those who are in need of that? So something to ponder about. But for the meantime, let's look at another great initiative from Daniel will present to us the outcome of the Independent Food system dialogue that was organized between April and June 2021 by 15 African cities. So Daniel, who works with ICLE, this great network of local government, as you have seen, this particular workshop has a focus on local government. And ICLE is one of those transformative networks that work towards sustainable local government through their projects initiative, and have been collaborating with many partners here, in this case, FAO, for instance, to facilitate this, the dialogue that took place in about 15 cities in Africa, looking very much at the food system summit to really gather the views. Now, Daniel, can you tell us more about some of the key outcomes of the dialogues that were held, and how did you manage to mobilize cities so that they can think more about nature-based solutions and address the climate change and food system issues at the same time? You have 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'll just basically go through the process, and then I highlight the outcomes. So essentially, just like we know, the food system dialogues were organized working with FAO and ICLE in 15 cities in Africa. And the intention was to engage multi-stakeholder actors within the food system, working in the food system space. And we worked collaboratively. And the purpose was to highlight the role that local governments were playing in improving their food system, and also to identify the key food system challenges, opportunities, and priorities. Another rationale was to generate discussions, action, and commitments from local governments for food system transformation. And so these dialogues were organized, and we had it in 15 cities across Africa. And you could see the list of the cities there. I must also mention that we worked very closely with UN Habitat for the Tunis dialogue, and also for the dialogues that we had in Kigali and Rulindo. And also we worked closely with UNEP and Rikoto for the dialogues that we had in Tanzania, and some other partners like that. So it was a collaborative process that ICLE and FAO engaged with. Now, coming to the outcomes of these dialogues, what we realized was that the participants emphasized that there is a need to ensure that these food systems in our cities are both resilient and sustainable. And in other words, also it is important to transition to a food system that is just and inclusive, that is that it includes every actor. And also there are some critical proposals for food system transformation in cities that were emphasized by our participants in the dialogue. One of the proposals is that it is important for us, if we want to ensure urban food system transformation, to invest in critical infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, we talk about market infrastructure, storage infrastructure, and also we need to incorporate local technology and innovation to improve efficiency. Another proposal that came through very strongly was that we need to foster territorial linkages. In other words, how are we linking our peri-urban areas, rural areas with our cities, and how are they benefiting from each other? And rather than promoting what I would call a parasitic relationship, ensuring symbiotic relations within these areas, within these regions. One of those things that came out also strongly was the fact that we need to begin to develop efficient data management systems. In other words, what came out strongly was the fact that food system data is a starting point for governance of the food system. And it is also important for us, if we want to say we want to monitor and evaluate how well we have been able to implement policies, we need data to do this. We need data that will tell us about what is working and what is not working. And so we need to invest in this. One thing that also came out strongly was the fact that we need to invest in innovative financing models to overcome challenges relating to resource constraints. We must begin to think about PPPs, subsidy schemes, and how can we better work around cooperatives to ensure an inclusive food system. Another thing that came out strongly was that we need to develop the capacity of every food system stakeholder through trainings, knowledge, filling the knowledge gap of our farmers, and to also develop coherence, policies that are coherent, and also ensure that we implement these kind of policies. One thing that came out strongly was the fact that we need to now begin to look at multi-level governance and strengthen the linkages between even international, national, regional, and local policies that speaks to the food system, and to ensure better intersectoral coordination among government departments. What came out is that there are departments that do not work with each other, they do not cooperate, and so we've got a department working in silos, and then police trying to implement their policies separately. Now they need to better coordinate themselves, better coordination amongst departments and cities for improved food systems. One thing that came out strongly was that we have not had it like this before, where all stakeholders come together, where every food system stakeholder come together. And so we need to continue to create spaces for continuous dialogue. We need to engage with other actors within the food system and foster partnership even between organizations. Like I told you, there was a partnership between FAO and ICLEI, and we also were able to bring some other organizations, so that UN Habitat, UNEP, RICOTO, and some other organizations on board to plan together. So we need to continue these and to ensure learning, co-creation, and cooperation. Now, if I want to dive deeper into the issues that borders around climate, what I've called climate actions that came out that participants emphasized for resilient urban food systems, is that we need to begin to think about nature-based solutions. And participants emphasized that, for instance, there was emphasis on buffer zoning to protect wetlands, and this came out in the Entebbe dialogue that we had, that we need to better protect the resources that we have. Another thing is that we need to address land management issues and ownership, because when we talk about encroachment, land encroachment and things like that, it is because maybe there are issues revolving around land management and ownership, and a land tenure system in Africa. It's a complicated issue in Africa that we need to pay attention to. Also, what came out strongly is the fact that we need to intensify urban agriculture and leverage on the potential for urban agriculture to ensure urban greening, increase food production, and livelihood sustenance. It also came out that we need to promote afforestation and reduce deforestation practices. In terms of food loss and waste management, I think it resonates with all that we have heard in this webinar today, that we must begin now to emphasize integrated waste management strategies across the food value chain. And we must begin to look at how we can transition to circular food systems. We rethink and reduce and reuse foods and within the system. Also the recycling of organic waste and waste to energy initiatives. It came out very strongly in the Kigali and Rulindo dialogue in Rwanda that waste sterilization must be emphasized, and regulations for retail outlets to better manage their food waste. In other words, how can they do this? How can we put regulation in place to ensure that our malls, our supermarkets, that are our retail outlets manage their food waste very well? And in other words, another thing that came out is that we must invest in transport and storage infrastructure to reduce food miles and to ensure that food gets to consumers and with ease. Finally, this is my last slide as I'm rounding off, is the fact that we need to look at adaptation measures and mitigation measures. We need to promote stress-tolerant crops and livestock, and the use of climate information services also needs to be promoted. I think I've talked about transport systems that we need to invest in. And finally, as a roundup, is the fact that we need to begin to pay attention to what we call food-sensitive planning. How do we integrate food into urban planning and design? I think it is one thing that is coming out strongly nowadays, in that we need to create spaces, places that facilitate equitable access to food for all. I think that is very important. And how can we pay attention to that, so that we invest in infrastructure and we put all these things in place? I think that is all the things that came out that speaks to climate action that we can use for resilient urban food system. Thank you very much.
Daniel, that's brilliant. I mean, looks like anyone who had not attended those 15 dialogues has a catch-up session, and great lessons, just something to build a university to look at all these areas of work. Really, just to show that there is a lot to do. There's a lot that has come out of these 15 dialogues, which the harvest was great. So we hope that now we're going to make use of that in many ways. So we have finished with the round of presentations, sharing some experiences. I'm grateful that many resources have been shared through the chat menu. For those who have not paid attention, there is a lot there. There were some questions that were also posted, and some colleagues were very keen to provide some elements of responses as well. With the permission of the organizers, maybe if there are some burning questions, I know I will go back to the speakers to just cover some of the questions I already placed to them, because they will ponder on them. If there are some burning questions that we'd like to address, maybe share, we are happy to collect maybe one or two. Otherwise, I will go back to the speakers in the order that they appear to address some of the questions that I've already asked them. I can't see any hand. You can raise your hand for anyone who wants to share something quickly. Otherwise, I will start if Dr. Gay is ready. You recall the questions up.
Yes, Remy, thank you very much. I think some of the questions has been addressed by the different presenters, and I don't think for the sake of time, I will go back to those questions like drought in the cities, and how do we manage the management of forests. But I would like to come back to a few of them. There was a question about how do we preserve forest from firewood, for instance. But I think this is a very interesting question, and this is what is happening in many of our countries, where government action, government policies, regulatory works, and also planning is usually not existing. And I think with good planning, city planning of cities, with awareness raising, and also giving alternate solution to the population. If you don't want people to go get firewood, you have to give them gas and other things that they can use. But then it has to be, they have to have access to that, it has to be available, and it has to be affordable. And I think this is important. There were questions about how do we get farmers in peri-urban agriculture system, or even youth to have access to market, and have youth actually be part of agricultural development in peri-urban agriculture. Well, let's take the example of what is happening now during COVID. And this, for me, is an opportunity. What is happening is that the youth have, and also farmers, they have realized that cities, because of the food system that is not working very fine now, that there is a value to actually produce in the cities with micro garden systems in the peri-urban, urban and peri-urban agriculture, and provide market with fresh food, which is clean, with less manipulation, and people are going for those kind of food that, in fact, they are producing also bio. But what is important is that youth are using also digitalization to sell their food, to deliver food in people's home. And this has been working really in many cities today. So, but training them will be important, giving them the means, supporting them, even with finance and knowledge, I think will be important for them to embark on those things. I think these are some of the questions that I gather here, but for drought, I think Nora talked about that. So I don't want to go back to it. They are experts, and I mean, what she said is what it is. So thank you. I will stop there. If there is any question, you can come back to me. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Robert. I know there are a few who have raised their hand. With the support of my colleagues, I would like maybe to ask if Ron could maybe come in.
Okay. Got me?
Ron? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ron.
Good afternoon. Good morning, Excellency. I'm Ron Tan from Singapore. I've been attending for the last 3 days this session. But I think the urgent thing is how do we ban toxic NPK fertilizer from the current practice to reform into nature-based solution. So this is a challenging question, and how do we get the policymaker to use nature-based solution as the key drive for COP26 and for a post-COVID green recovery? Thank you. Get me?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron. I think we picked that question also earlier on, but we're going to get back to that. Now, maybe we can try to see if Mohomuzi is available. Would like to also maybe ask this question.
Yes, hello.
Yes.
I don't know if you, okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. Yes, I am also for FAO, and I mean, I would like to congratulate my colleagues and our partners who've made this day an amazing day. But my preoccupation is, you know, talking about sustainable food systems in urban areas. Is well, the issues of nutrition, I believe they need to come out clearly, because as the urban population increases, we know the vulnerable people will increase. There will be demand for jobs, demand for healthy diets. I think Dr. Robert Gay has already touched on this, which is extremely important. Maybe one thing that I did not hear a lot of is the pollution associated with food packages. I think for Africa, to be honest, this is becoming a very big thing, because everywhere you go in the cities, you see these empty bottles of water, you see these empty food packages in plastics. They are just littered everywhere. I think as FAO, UN Habitat, and other stakeholders and urban champions, we really need to bring our heads together and see how we can tackle this growing problem, because I think for me it is becoming serious. Thank you.
No, thank you both. I think to put those questions on using the nature-based solutions as an entry point by banning some of the toxic, nocive, substances, and this question of food. But are we going to talk about nutrition as well? Are we going to look at the implications on pollution? Where are we creating the connections? But since it was not addressed to anyone in specific, I would maybe turn to Jean to maybe share the experience from Uganda, Kigali, considering that I already asked him a few questions. Some were already been addressed by Robert. If there are some additional points he would like to add, to cover, he could do so. And also the two other questions that were asked. Jean, are you available? Then we can turn then to Paul later on if he has additional points and final words. Jean, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll first respond to the three questions asked before. One is which authority in charge of protecting agricultural land? I will respond this in a framework of decentralization. We have Rwanda Environment Management Authority and Land Management and Use Authority, working under the supervision of the Ministry of Environment. This is at a policy level, and the city of Kigali in practice. So we work jointly. So these are key organ institutions in charge of enforcing the compliance with the master plan. So at central level, we have Rwanda Environment and Environment Management Authority, together with the Land Management and Use Authority. So at local level, the city of Kigali is in charge. The second question was, how do we manage the food system in the city of Kigali? I just want to first appreciate the project that we are implementing with the FAO called the City Region Climate Resilience Food System. Actually, production is made outside the city of Kigali. The agricultural production is in the surrounding neighboring districts. The city of Gari is more of consumption, but also with the guidance of a master plan and this demanding this increase of in population growth. So we are now trying to see how we can put in place this with this urban agriculture, not only for local consumption, but also thinking of the export. So briefly, the production is done, more big percentage is from the neighboring districts, and the city of Gari is like a market for consumption. So jointly, we are now trying to see how we can leverage on best practices, but also think of turning our land, our agricultural land into a productive way. So another question was the agriculture and the natural resources. With reference to the master plan, agriculture land has around 25% of the total size of the city of Kigali. And looking at the natural resources, the mining, the forest, percentage is around 11. This is to be confirmed. But also with back to the question of pollution, the government of Rwanda has put in place policies and the regulatory framework in terms of reducing this kind of pollution associated with the food packages, but also in a afforestation way, we have 3 types of tree planting. One is the agroforestry. Just these are trees planted together with the, in farming area, but also we have another component of anti-air pollution. These are trees planted alongside the main roads, just as a quick response to vehicle gas emissions. And the third one is the wood roads, just creating the natural, creating and rehabilitating the natural forestry. So these are key, these are my inputs on that. For the natural-based solutions as agricultural inputs, of course, directly to the fertilizers. This is a process. Looking at the productivity to increase production, we need the combination of the two, but also with the compost and the natural fertilizers. There are initiatives ongoing, but this is a process. And looking at the market, it is costly. But also we take into consideration the importance of natural-based inputs to agriculture. I think I've tackled some of the questions. Probably if there are others, I'm happy to come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have to press on. Maybe turn to Kisumu. There were some questions asked to Paul, mainly about the nexus between the market and the farmers and the role of the youth. How do you incentivize? And if there are the final words and takeaway, and I take note of some contributions from the chat, including one from the member of the parliament in Tanzania about the role of the rural areas supporting food system in cities. Paul, do you have a few additional points to make?
Thank you, Remy. Actually, for land use, the land at national level, we have the Department of Land and Land Commission. And at the local, at the county level, we have the county government land department and the city management that controls the land use. And I can say concerning preserving land for agriculture and natural uses, there are gazettement. Land is usually gazetted for forestry or something like that. And for the city plan, they have assigned some areas for agriculture for future. Then urban and peri-urban agriculture and farmers, there was a question whether farmers are interested in food markets of the cities. Yes, they are very much interested. And every morning you could see motorbicycles and vehicles carrying food from rural or peri-urban areas into the cities. And some of these foods go direct to households in the cities, and I think others to the main markets. And are we developing specific programs to support farmers in the urban, to support farmers to connect to urban markets? Yes, we are doing some programs, and these programs include improving transport network in the peri-urban and rural areas, one. Secondly, we are developing aggregation centers where farmers can collect their produce for transportation in bulk to the city markets. Within the cities and even at farmers level, we are trying to develop cold storage facilities where farmers can store their produce before sales or before moving them. There was another question on promoting any specific kind of production, such as agroecology. I can say, yes, we are doing that. We are promoting agroforestry, we are promoting good agronomic practices, aquaculture, soil conservation, and integrated pest management. I think there's a lot that is being done on that. Then whether the youth are involved in urban and peri-urban agriculture, I think with the introduction of modern technologies that are not labor intensive, we have seen a number of youths getting into agricultural value chains. They are in production, they are involved in transportation, they are involved in value addition. And a question was asked about schools. What are we doing? In Kenya now, we are promoting a 4KR clubs. Each county and cities will establish the 4K clubs in schools where the children, the school-going, primary school-going children and secondary school-going children will be exposed to agriculture and forestry practices. I think that is what I can say now, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that clarification and additional information. Very helpful. Let me now turn to Nora. You have addressed some of the questions in the chat, but there are still some related to, how do you govern forestry, urban forestry that would be sustainable, and any other final thought that you may have.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Remy. And I have seen, participants are really very much, participating. So that's great, and contributing with even examples and their initiatives in their own cities and towns, like, for example, in Niamey, Niger. So actually, as we say in Arabic, in my native Arabic, يد وحدة ما تسفق, which means, of course, one hand cannot upload alone. I cannot upload alone. I need the two hands. So this is why I think now we turn the page. We turn the page currently looking at the food systems, as the wider system. So there is a need, and this is already happening in different cities, in different countries in Africa, where there is establishment of committees and consultation, planning, including forestry sector. But forestry sector cannot work alone in a city or in a town. He needs the municipality. He or she needs the different other actors, civil society, and different sectors, and the land use planning and so on. So actually, I think it's only by setting up or working together as one anchor is the municipality, bring in different, organizations and stakeholders and cross-sectoral and sectors together, we can work. And FAO, for example, is helping in facilitating that in our country offices, working hand in hand with different, municipalities and forestry, environment, development sectors, for instance, agriculture and so on. But maybe in other areas, it is another organization that can be actually the anchor. So it depends really very seriously. And that's why in the roadmap, we have identified, the participants have identified different areas of action, including, how to build up this governance mechanism systems that can be sustainable, and doing that how, through, for example, advocacy and communications to ensure that there is a real communication between the different stakeholders, because coordination will not help in FAO in headquarters or in FAO itself country office. It will be done in the country, but with the ownership of the governments, of the research, of the private sector, of the stakeholders, the forestry department, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is what I wanted to say mainly on this point. And you don't have just one recipe, because it depends on the context. We cannot generalize. It depends on how the administrative structures are set up in each country or in each city or town. Or so this is what I wanted just to look at and to have. But saying that, we should not just close ourselves in the city. We need really to look at the landscape, at landscape approaches, integrated approaches, including the rural and the urban areas, looking at the value chain from the land, from the sea to the end product to the consumer. So it's really a lot of work, and one response cannot really, let's say, make it work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are over an hour and a half in the discussion. It shows how passionate, how important it is, and many are still on. With your permission, I would like to maybe bring this session to a close by first thanking the 5 speakers who have brought really a strong view, strong perspective from African cities and countries. And I know that many people in the audience have found that inspiring, and that would trigger more desire, more ambition for greener cities in Africa and more nature-based solutions. Some of the things that we can take away from where I'm sitting is that perhaps 1 hour was not sufficient to cover such a rich topic. Africa is also diverse, so we may have to take that forward. But we know that climate change is still very important. The issue, we can't discuss climate change without talking about circular economy, without touching on urban linkages, innovations, mindset change, technology, equity, environmental safeguards, and many other issues that we have touched on during this 1.5 hour session. So we have heard that the importance of inclusive governance had to be taken into account, the territorial approach, the involvement of the local government, the local authorities, in the context of a multi-level governance is essential. And we know that the Green Cities Initiative is working towards that and is taking cooperation and partnership as essential pillar to make this type of mindset change happening. So we also know that in this context of the Africa Climate Week that is ending, there is a strong call to that for multi-sector approach. We heard in one of the presentations where I think Nora was hammering this down, that the Ministry in charge of Agriculture had to work with other land ministries or other sectoral agencies to make sure that the role of local government is really at the heart of making that change, because that's where changes are happening. And that urban forestry had emerged as something that could be really important to look at the nature-based solutions while addressing climate change, while addressing the issue of food, nutrition, and so forth. And we have seen examples from Kisumu, including their plan that they want to do. We have seen that it's not only multi-scale or multi-sector, but it's multi-level approaches. The approaches that will work for many stakeholders will be envisaged, and that we can't focus on just one topic. We have to see any topic as an entry point to address other important issues that are facing cities and the human being. And now, in the context of the UN Food System Summit that just concluded, you may recall that again, there was a great call for policymakers and stakeholders to work collaboratively, to join hands, to promote systemic change when it comes to food. And we have heard here, let's not talk about food without nutrition. So that's very important to know. And that FAO and the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition Gain, for instance, is creating this type of alliances that would help us tackle this type of multiple stakeholder engagement, policy engagement, and so forth, and bringing all the stakeholders, who are willing, who are able, who have some interest in this topic to look in the same direction. So coalition is important, alliances is important. You can't do this alone. And I think colleagues we share some of the network or some of this system that we have in the chat, so that you can look at that at your leisure. We heard also from one of the, I think it was ICLE, the 15 dialogues, that we need space for permanent dialogue interaction. We can't do this in an ad hoc manner. We have to create that space. And as we work towards the COP26, let's also use that as a platform to continue arguing, to carrying that message, so that we can make really systemic and consistent change in our food system, in our nutrition, for a greener and nature-based solutions in cities, especially in Africa, so that they are more resilient and adapt to change. So again, I would like to thank all of you who have stayed on, the speakers and FAO and ICLE, other partners who have really has shown throughout that we are all one, and we all want one thing, that this session has been very informative for me, and it has been a great honor to keep you on for more than 1.5 hours than was expected, but was a real treat for me. So I thank you very much. I hope you have learned something, you have taken something, and you'll be one of the change agents that we are all willing to be. So I wish you all a good end of the day, or good night, or good morning for some of you, and a fruitful Africa Climate Week that is ending tomorrow. So again, thank you very much, and have a great day, evening, or morning.